Hello, this is George Sandman. I'm the founder and CEO of Growth Drive. And Growth Drive is a system used by business advisors to drive client profits, growth, and value. Now, we're also a community. Every week we get together to talk about all things business advisor, everything clients, cases, things we're seeing out in the world. Now, tune in here to this podcast, and you can join the conversation by scanning this QR code, passcode 867-5309. Jump into the conversation. Everyone's welcome. We're looking forward to having you. So here we go. On with the show.
It's great to see you, man.
How are things going? It's been a while.
Awesome. How about you?
Oh my gosh, it's so busy.
Good.
Did you get my email? Like, you know what's going on.
I did.
Hey,
Yep.
George,
Hey, Mike.
exit factor.
Okay.
What do you know about them?
I know a little bit about them.
Go
I
ahead.
know. I know a little bit too, but I want to hear what George has to say first.
Okay, fair enough.
There are a lot of players in the space, and they are a traditional exit-focused technology.
Hey guys, good morning.
Hey, man.
Mike, how are you?
Good.
And they're doing some interesting stuff. It's good for the space to have a lot of players. They're in a different category than we are. Our category is strategic capacity, and our category is the three dimensions of business growth. And the exit factor is like Capitalize, like Quist, like VOP, like they're an exit. They're 10-yard line guys. Great. People need help at the 10-yard line. Our argument is very different. Our argument is that exiting your business physically, selling it to a third party is one option, and arguably, and you'll hear the podcast later this week, arguably not the best option for most business owners. 75% misery index, right? Or 75% misery after people leave. And the deals, when we're getting this white paper out, I just promised Andy I'd finish it this week. The deals fail. They fail to meet the thesis. They fail to deliver the value. They fail the stakeholders. This whole thing's a mess. So if, everybody's going exit, sell your business, God bless. Our category is strategic capacity. Our category is hitting an asset. My soapbox. How's that, Mike?
I just texted you why. So,
okay. Mr. Newbar, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yes.
Are you talking about the exit factor by Jennifer Flavovich?
Maybe. I know it's the exit factor. They sell
I was about to
franchise.
say, I don't recognize the name. Let me see.
Yeah, I looked into that franchise. Yeah, I looked into that.
It's the same
Yeah.
thing.
I walked away from it because it was all videos, and it was
Yep, same one.
I didn't like the talk. It was very impersonal. It was like, listen to a bunch of videos and then talk to me a little bit and listen to more videos. And I'm like, nah, that's just too low touch for me. But anyway, I guess
Could it possibly be Mike because you already knew how to do it?
no, I just didn't like the approach. I thought the approach was pretty basic, but there are people there are groups, there are companies that it'll work for, but they're smaller. They're like Main Street businesses. Yeah. But anyway, I did look at it. It was
it's interesting, and they're pursuing a franchising model, which, by the way, I just had a very interesting conversation with someone who was read in, could not be more deeply read in this space, and talking about the impact of franchising on EOS. And hasn't been good. Franchising is tough. It's tough.
Yeah, no, trust me.
Highly attractive at first, but it's tough.
I bought them and I've sold them.
Yeah. Well, we are not pursuing a franchising model. You know why? Because we are not going to pursue a franchising model. So very cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for asking, Mike. And
Hey, real quick, I just want to thank everybody for supporting the book. We hit number one.
yes, I was
Yeah.
Number one
Awesome.
in three categories. Thank you.
wow.
number one. So, Mike, would it be fair to say that you are a 2-time best-selling author?
It would be very fair to say.
Excellent.
go.
Excellent.
It would be
You know how I can tell you're having a good day? No black hoodie today. You're like, I'm celebrating, man.
No, actually, I had a meeting with an M&A guy. So
you get dressed for that. So good. Oh my God.
So, Mike, it's your book. Will you build it? Would you build this? Is that the name of your book?
yeah, that's it.
Okay, good.
It's a good read.
1995 on Amazon.
Yesterday it was free. Yeah, for people that took up on my offer
Damn,
over
I
the
missed
weekend.
So you made number one, and I haven't even given you a review yet.
I know. So that you are now part of the momentum.
Okay.
Propulsion.
Yeah. So
No,
now,
congratulations, man. I'm happy for you. It's a
Seems
cool book.
appropriate with accelerants in my business name.
I
I'm part of Momentum.
could not agree more. I could not agree more. Like, make yourself better. Buy and review my book. There you go. No,
Make yourself better. I like that. Hey, Mike, can you get me on the main stage at a big event?
I totally can. It'll only cost you 10%.
So, Mike, is this
Now you have an agent working for you, George, for your speaking career?
No. Mike and I were joking. I said I was commenting that there was no chance in hell. I could apply. I could take the time to apply for a speaking position, but there was no chance in hell because of physical capacity that I will actually have a chance of getting.
And
You don't have strategic capacity
No,
to
I-
take
No.
on
This
task?
is just a limited number of spots and a big audience to satisfy.
For a
That's all.
10% finder's fee, I can guarantee him a slot on the main stage.
Is the 10% on top?
Yes.
I know that. For only $82,000.
Hey,
So- What's interesting? And is Tim here? Tim Coulter's here. Eric Owen, Larry Prince. Tim is not here this morning.
The Larry Prince.
The Larry. We were talking about strategic capacity. It's interesting. I was yesterday actually with a gentleman we have two people right now who are going to go see 3D who are leaving Capitalize, not because there's anything wrong with Capitalize, but because they really value the concept of strategic capacity. And that Tim and I coincidentally were in a long conversation this morning about strategic capacity. Who's here? There's Tim. Tim and I were talking about strategic capacity this morning, and I know I beat the gong about it, but it is really resonating with the market. I know that it's resonating. I hear from you that it's resonating with your clients. And Tim and I had a great conversation. Loved it. I was thinking about it afterwards, Tim. Thank you. and Ed Wonke. So, anyway, I'm just making that comment. Strategic capacity is our superpower.
So I'm going to throw out something on a different topic. I learned yesterday, George, that the links to the strategic capacity clarity analysis, the full one and the
Snapshot.
that they changed.
They did. And there's an
so
email going out today.
somebody read a QR code on the back of my business card last week, sent me a note yesterday saying, "Hey, this doesn't work." So
I am very sorry. I hope you're using so Paul, can I address that?
I just assume I have to figure out how to change it on my website in particular.
We moved from growth-capacity.com to strategiccapacity.ai. And we have a host of redirects. That's great. The problem with the redirects is, as you guys have noticed, the increasing security out there, and that is playing out. That's played out a couple of ways. Emails just not even leaving the sender, and with redirects being viewed with extreme suspicion because the people who are trying to hijack, etc., are using redirects to take over sites.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I apologize. Had I known, maybe I would have not moved to strategiccapacity.ai. But here we are. We've made the change. the links. So for some people, the links are working fine. For others like you, Tim went through this. It's a problem. So we're sending out an email today saying, hey, we have put out a blog article, and I talked about it. That we're sending out a note today saying, hey, heads up. When you log into your dashboard, you're going to need to update these links.
So this was fairly recent then.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That makes me feel better that I
Yeah. No.
is reading something.
And the redirect's not working, just cropped up. What, Tim? End of last week?
Yeah, we
was
gave
the first
somebody
one
a
I
link
took.
to use. We gave somebody the link to use on Wednesday, and when he went to do the assessment on Friday, it didn't work at the end of the day. So it gave George and I a chance to talk over the weekend. And
So,
that was a positive statement.
now we dug in. We have it working, but the redirects are a problem. So I apologize. And an email will go out.
Well, just as bad. I tried going into my website and figuring out it's just changing one link, right? I spent 20 minutes and I could not figure out how to do that link myself. And I may have to reach out to my former web people to figure it out for me, which is unfortunate, but life happens.
Life happens. Where? Thank you. There's a QR code in the back of my book as well. That's being too busy. Okay.
So one
Thank you.
thing that I thought might be a good discussion sometime
Yeah.
is not talking about how we get prospects, but talking more about what do we do for proposals. So in the last week, for no particular reason, I ended up having 3 proposals go out, and they were very different proposals. One was just to an old friend in the industry for 30 years doing something different. It was an email and, okay, you just do something, and we'll talk about quick invoice and you Zelle me a certain amount. Okay. Another was a full kind of a proposal that I normally do that's somewhere between 2 and 3 pages after we've talked for a year and figured out what we're going to do. And one was in between that and stuff. So I have a format that I learned early on, and I just kind of do variances of that. I've seen what Patty does in what she does, and that's huge. The reports that Strategic Capacity puts out are huge. So I think it could be useful sometime to discuss the different approaches to doing a proposal rather than talking about the prospecting and the funnel.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. It's funny, Paul. I don't know. I'm just taking a note here. We put out a proposal template last week, the week prior. That is, sort of get you thinking. It was Wayne Lorgas had asked, he needed something really on point, that's very growth drive process centric, and we did that. It joins the other proposals that are available in Circle and in the community. And Paul, your point's a good one. What does a proposal look like? And I'll stop talking and throw it out to you guys.
So George, 2 questions. Where do I find that on Circle? Is there a tab or?
Just go to the search bar, right, and click in.
Yeah. And then
it is also in. Well, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Got you. I should have known that. That's pretty obvious. But but I've been asked to do something that's kind of interesting with Growth Drive, because I did a level 2 report for a company, and and they got all this stuff, and I'm trying to help them implement some of it. But then they said to me, "Oh, Mike, we're interested in buying another company. Can you help us analyze that company the way you analyze me?"
Love it.
And so that's an acquisition, not an exit kind of exercise, right? So do we have? And I'll throw it out. Has anybody done that on the other side, on the buy side, not on the sell side?
I have. I've done probably maybe 20 or 30 of them.
All right. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Mike, your question's so timely. That is precisely the point of the white paper that Andy and I are working on. Because right now there's lopsided information, there's information control. It's not nefarious, but there's information control by the seller, right? The seller creates the sin, the seller makes the argument for value, the seller goes out and creates, and let's create, a frenzy and get into get into a contest that's going to set the close date and the price. Great. I'm simplifying, but that's what, the information control is on the sell side. What if and we know that a lot of these transactions fail. If we analyze strategic capacity in advance of an LOI, and we have a bona fide look at what this business looks like, we might bring a lot of efficiency to the market. And I won't go down that rabbit hole. Mike, I love the fact that they're asking for that. I'd be glad to help you in any way that I can. And if it comes down to creating a proposal, happy to help.
Thank you. One of the things that I found, Mike, was that when I worked with the businesses, when I talked to the proposed firm that they're looking at buying,
Okay.
I really got some insights that didn't jump out on the financial disclosure documentation when they shared with each other, and I got covered under the NDA with the proposed discussion, so that I didn't have to cover myself on that one.
Yeah, interesting.
You mean
Well, this
the
is small.
acquirer had an NDA already with the subject seller,
Yes,
and you're just as an advisor to them. You're
and
covered.
I got added as a supplement to that in order to make sure that I was covered under the same disclosure thing, because they didn't want anything to go outside. The other thing is that when I ran the level 2 documentation and analysis, and I discussed it with several of with the management group there, that was very insightful.
So you talked with the management of the seller to do the clarity level 1 or 2. Super.
Yep, and the key was, um, they only had 2 people in that category. I mean, it was the owner, and then the chief financial person, and the sales person who ran all sales. It turns out the operations person was really kind of a non-critical person, because they were actually working every day just like any other person in their operation side.
Were
So-
you surprised that they were willing to do a clarity assessment
Not at all.
pre-LOI?
Not at all. And one of the things that they asked of the proposed buyer is, if he does this, can we get a copy of it too? And you know what? The buyer said, most absolutely, because we want to make sure that the relationship is positive for both parties. We don't want to have you feel like we've stolen something from you, or got an insight to you that you couldn't and have on your own.
Fair to say it was a lower middle market, under $10 million
It
sales company?
it was an $8 million business,
Yeah. Okay.
and it discussed very comfortably. When I got to the $22 million, that did not work that well.
Okay.
And to what do you attribute that?
The $22 million wanted to hire me on their own, and then they would determine if they would share it with the person who was interested in buying them.
Got it.
And I became the bouncing tennis ball in the middle of the game, and I was on the net. And ironically, the buyer said, "Here's the price that we think the business is worth. Go do what you want and charge them the full price. And if it raises our price more than 25%, we'll reimburse you, and we'll make sure we make the buy." because
So
they felt what I would learn from the assessment would most likely identify it to be more valuable than they anticipated. But I'm just looking at the financial statements.
Confidence, heck yes. A confident people, the market rewards confidence.
So, and how do you know? And how do you know that the seller? This is the acquisition, the acquisition candidates. How do you know they're not gaming your questions and trying to put their best? I mean, do you verify their answers?
The thing is, when I'm in the room with them, and so it's not like I'm trusting. I'm there, and I get the reaction, and there will be discussions amongst three people. And in my case, it was three people about the answer, and they would be subjectively challenging. I don't think we're really that. I think we're more this type of thing, responding. And I think that gave us a tremendous, gave me an understanding that they were trying to be accurate. They weren't trying to game the system at all.
Well, and I'd love your guys, please, I'd love some comments on this. So in the current M&A process, we have due diligence. And as part of due diligence, and there's increasingly, and my friend Bob Dunn at GF Data, we're no longer GF Data, right? ACG, and I geek out on this. The sell side quality of earnings, or Q of E, actually increases the price when the sell side does it. And we believe it's because it gives the seller the opportunity to clean up some of the things that are going to pose problems when the buyer does a Q of E. Okay. What else happens in a transaction? Well, we're going to end up with reps and warranties, right? We're going to end up with, basically the seller is saying, as you do when you sell a home, we promise that this is reality on the ground. If the buy side does an analysis of strategic capacity, they're going to need to ask the seller these questions, right? Someone is going to, let's say they hire a evaluator like Ed or one of their, an iBank advisor. Great. At some point, how reasonable is it to say, okay, well, we have this calculation of strategic capacity, this scoring, and you're telling us that it's accurate. Now, a lot of what goes into, measuring strategic capacity, these are elements that will end up, resources, documents, data that will end up in the data room, right, on the deal. If you go through and look at the objectives and the key results, this is all stuff that's going to end up in the data room. So we're actually getting we're getting a shot of reality long before due diligence in this incredibly painful process. I'll stop commenting there.
George, I'd just comment that my experience says that lower middle market, even middle market, does a horrible job of complete due diligence. Financial due diligence, legal due diligence, yeah, absolutely. Like they'll check all the boxes on making sure that they've looked at leases and financial documents and legal documents. So all that happens. But the questions that we ask, the people directed questions, the management team, they'll do some superficial questions. Do you have a good management team? Tell me about that. But the level that we can go to with level 1 and level 2 clarity and the types of things it pulls out of there are far more diligence than most middle market, lower middle market companies do.
To follow up on what Eric just shared, to bring it back to proposals, which Mike started us off on, you would have to have a different proposal with different disclaimers, I would imagine, if you were involved on the buy side doing this. Because immediately what I started thinking of is, do I want to even be accountable on that side of the deal? How would I structure my proposal and my contract so that I am good, right? And then I asked myself, well, how well am I doing that right now on this, you know what I mean? And I think that proposal thing, Mike, has some legs with really examining various factors to include liability.
Yeah.
I agree, Mike. I think if I'm advising a seller, I would look at this and say, we either do it ourselves and find out what the problems are. This is like doing a inspection of your own home to make sure it's ready for sale. Or I would advise my clients to tell the buyer, we'll get to due diligence when we get to due diligence, right? I wouldn't be doing due diligence before the LOI unless I was doing it on myself as an advisor.
But
Seller side.
super interesting because it, to my mind, what we're trying to avoid is any this one day
Surprises.
This is not well, it's also not rising to the level of a test, right? So
one of the things that I heard this morning from Michael Butler at one of the M&A firms, his comment,
sharp cookie, yeah.
His comment was that often owners will contact them and say, "Could you help me now? Because I've got a letter of intent." And so, you know, he says, "Okay, we now are behind the 8 ball." And so the first thing he said was, let's engage somebody to go, an accounting firm to go in and do a QOV and take a look at it. And the interesting part of a case that he just was involved with was they had a letter of intent for $20 million. They did a QOV. They got the seller to give them the right to go out and auction a little bit on the opportunity. They ended up selling it for $40 million. And you know who the buyer was? The person who made the original offer of 20.
Yeah.
So that'll tell you, if you look at a QOV and you're working with the client, the more we do with our level 2 and get them to understand and see what's going on and where the weaknesses and shortfalls are, we can drive up that QOV value significantly just by having a person that engages us to identify the spots that some of which they can work on their own and some of which they may need to take 6 months to polish. But you know what?
Yeah.
The buyer's not going to go away. They're going to just be patient and say, if we want it in its best shape, not in its as-is shape.
And to your point, how long does due diligence take, right? It's the 6 months is not some crazy
Exactly
new extension. 6 months is reasonable.
Yeah. Yeah, my comment was more, and Ed, I couldn't agree with your point more. My comment was more, when you're in the seller seat, controlling the story is everything.
Mm-hmm.
And at some level is contributing to the inefficiency of the private capital markets at some level.
Don't disagree with that at all, George.
And by the way, I don't believe that any of this, and I'm careful to say this, Andy and I are careful to say this in the white paper, there's no implication. Sellers aren't trying to cheat anybody in the same way as when you sell your house, you're just trying to put the best foot forward. And you are going to say, yeah, okay, so, you know, there's the X problem, the septic tank is 20 years old. I don't know what, but yeah.
You don't go on your first date with somebody and tell them all the bad things about you, right? Like, that's not
how do you have another day?
Well, got me married.
You know, again, it's about the story. You're not trying to hide those bad things. You're going to tell them, but the first date isn't the time to tell them all the bad things.
Does
right?
Laura know this?
Yeah. I guarantee you, Mike, Laura knows all the bad things.
Saint Laura.
After 34 years, she knows every one of the bad things and then some. But you guys get the point. You guys get the point, right? Like, it's not about hiding it, but it is George, you said it well, it's putting your best foot forward. You want to have a good impression to start with, because you know there's some things that, you know, you're going to have to work through, but you want to actually start on the right foot, right?
So Eric, would this be a fair argument? Like, listen, let's think in terms of having a level 2 analysis, right?
Yeah.
So deep analysis. It's like, you know, here are all the things, here are the reason that we're a badass and we're a hell of an acquisition and you should pay top dollar for us.
Yeah.
Here are some areas where post money, this is where we're going to focus. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we increase capacity in these key areas. And we believe that by doing that, we're going to increase that will have an immediate impact on the value of the business, right? Transferable value. And it will position us to hit our growth gates.
Let me state my position really clearly, George. I think it would be a hell of a good idea for every seller to do level 1 and level 2 and then go and present that in their story to the buyer. I think that's a great idea. I think as a seller, letting the buyer do a examination on you before the due diligence stage, like right away early on, without you knowing what the result of that is going to be and having a chance to look at it first, is a dangerous place to live. That's asking a question you don't know the answer to in the sales process. And Mike will tell you that's a very, very bad idea.
They teach you that in law school, the beginning of year 2.
Yeah.
And not ever ask a question to which you don't know the answer.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, guys. I want to be super clear. I think it is a great idea. I'm just saying, given what the process is, we have to realize how we would do it, how we would execute it, and how we would use it. Right? That's all. Right?
100%.
So mechanically, if so, there's no there. In your experience, when it is a buy side Q of E undertaken, when in the process?
Ed?
Yeah, Ed, I defer to Ed on that because the clients I'm working with are not often big enough to do Q of E, right?
I felt like that. I felt like an 8-year-old at Sunday school. Jesus.
I think the answer is Jesus.
Yeah. I think that the thing is that we see the QOV being requested more often on projects that are 10 million and up.
Yeah.
When you're below that number, I don't think they put half as much effort into analyzing.
You're
the
talking deal
opportunity.
value? You're talking deal value at 10 million.
Deal value, correct.
Yeah, just to be
Deal
clear,
value.
not revenue, deal value.
Yeah, deal value, correct. 10 million and up, a lot of effort.
That's a big freaking company.
When you get down to below that, you find that it's often a synergistic acquisition, and so the buyer already has got an insight and already knows what the seller doesn't have and is capitalizing it.
Agree with that totally.
My son's doing that right now. He's now just completed his 7th acquisition. But, when you're doing $90 million and you're buying vendors that do a part that you then are going to distribute, you can pay whatever you need to pay because you're going to get the full markup and you're going to add the profitability. What you won't know is their business as efficient as it could be? And that's what you're going to find out as you're operating it. And it'll probably take you 6 months and you'll clean that up anyway.
Yeah. Agreed. I totally agree with that statement. And I agree with you at 10 million is about 8 to 10 million is about the value that Q of E comes in, which is, again, if you're doing your math, 10 million at 10% return would be $100 million revenue company, right? Like just
correct.
So how about the sell side?
Or a small financial services company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how about
but Q of E on a simple company, Mike, doesn't make sense.
I'm just saying the $10 million valuation, like purchase price, that's a small financial services company.
Yeah, but Q of E isn't going to make as much of a difference on a.
I wasn't addressing the Q&E. I was addressing the size of the company.
Understood.
And stay with this longer, and George, maybe you could add to this in the sense of if a Q of E is a company maybe in the $80 million plus range, where does the Clarity 1 and 2 start to age out in the sense of the company is too big for a comfort zone of the accuracy of Clarity 1 and 2? And in the second part of that is, Ed, do you use Clarity 1 and 2 as some of the root cause of what you see in a Q of E? Is kind of the underlying reasons for what comes out in the Q of E?
I would say that level 1 is useful, level 2 is overkill. In the early stages,
In the early
if
stages,
if
yep.
we need to go into a Q of E, level 1 is the most insightful because that's gonna nail down, are we in the right ballpark from a value perspective and also from an operating perspective?
Well, and I want to build on what you just said, and that's why I did this. There we have the calculation of value, which is let's just put that off on the mildly interesting. The analysis, the scoring of strategic capacity at a granular level, that is immensely important. And so, we need to, in our own brains, let's just take your calculation of value and say, this is notional planning purposes. At the end of the day, willing buyer, willing seller, the number on the check. This is for planning purposes. It's a hell of a good number. And Ed, you've been doing valuations for ever. It is a very accurate calculation of value. Who cares? Strategic capacity and understanding the moving parts, the gears inside the business engine and their ability to predictably and sustainably run together to deliver financial results, that is insanely important. And that's what we should be focusing on in a transaction. And people buy broken companies all the time, right? They're happy to buy broken companies. They just want to know where they're broken and that the acquirer doesn't care or has the capacity to fix them.
George, I think it's important not only to know the total strategic capacity score, but the buyer wants to know where it's broken. They want to know the score on each of those 24 questions because they want to know, I want to know if I'm a buyer, are those in my area of expertise that I'm going to be able to fix well, or do I need to go out and hire people to do that, right? Like
100%.
If I'm buying the house, if it's electrical, I'm doing it myself. If it's plumbing, I'm never doing it. Right? Like, right? Like buyers think like that. And so I agree with Ed. I think it's immensely important to do clarity level 1, both for the valuation, but also for you're going to do that as a buyer when you're in the inquiry anyway, to find out, you're going to ask those kinds of questions. What clarity level 1 does is it encapsulates those in an organized, structured way that helps us get to that answer faster than just a general question. Hey, Tip, tell me about your company. Right? Like, it's a different process.
Right. Thanks, Eric, and everyone. I asked a specific question. I want to come back to it because I have a real case of a $130 million company where I'm doing a senior leadership alignment report between the father and the son. This is an excellent company. It will be my case for those who are in the case study group for next week. And so I was with the owner, the father, yesterday. He's taken Clarity 1 in the past. He's going to do it again a year and a half later, so we could do with his son who just completed it at a $130 million, very profitable company. My focus is to strategic capacity. Eric, to your point, it's not the valuation. To what extent do I embrace the valuation or say, hey, don't even go down that path because there's a $130 million company. Their buy one day will be a strategic buy anyway. So I just wanted to get a sense of the valuation component of using clarity.
Give Ed a call, because at that size, the general numbers in it might not make sense. Well, I don't know. Does it adjust? It adjusts, George.
Well, but especially if we're looking at, what the calculation of value is for a financial buyer. And if we anticipate there being a strategic or synergistic buyer, that changes the price, right? That changes the value position and therefore the price. So, this is from a financial buyer's perspective. That I'll just leave it there. Larry, did that helpful?
Well, it's simple for me. My focus is the strategic capacity alignment between the two of them, not the valuation. They're not selling it anyway.
And I think it's highly relevant, Larry, at the strategic capacity level, even in the range you're talking about. I think I'd take a $250 million company and use the 24 questions and get the strategic capacity. I think it's highly relevant.
We just had a huge transaction that came in very close. I have to go back and look. I don't want to misquote, but it had a significant. They're all significant, right? But it had a larger than we normally see case close and within range of the calculation. So, but again, there are a lot of different kinds of transactions, right? And a lot of different motivations. I just want to be careful. We buy data on financial buy. We're looking at it from a financial buyer's perspective.
So
It brings up another point, George, and that is the expertise that we go down the path of actually getting people to get to the right answers in each of the 24 questions, because that matters, right? Our level of work and really challenging them. We just had a client where I went back to them afterwards. One of my partners and I sat down with them, went through the process. We went back and looked at all our notes, and we went back and had a call with them and challenged them on 5 of their answers that we thought were overstated based on our discussion and all of our notes as we started reviewing it and started to think about what was going on, and said, there's no way they're a 3 in that category. How could they be? I'm just using the generic. How can they be a 3 when they said these other things in our notes, right? And so we went back and said, we're going to challenge you on these 5. And we had an hour-long discussion about the 5 different points and talking about the notes that we had and just saying, and we didn't say you have to change your number. What we said is, in light of these things, do you think you're still, partly right or mostly, right? And when we got done, they agreed to all 5, but but this is the point. You can go through it really quickly and get their answers and think it's okay, but there's if you're being diligent about it, I'll use a word we've been using a lot this morning. If you're being diligent about it, you really have to go back and compare it to all the notes and all the things you've heard and your gut feelings about what you've read into the discussion to get back to the real number.
And Eric, this is why I love that you just said that. And I'm just a little plug, but Claude Zoom AI notes attached to the client file.
Huge.
So that's going to be huge. Tim, bye. Thank you very much, man. I'll talk to you soon.
You're so talkative, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, I could contribute. See ya. Build on it.
I know that all of us work in middle market, lower middle market, but last week I attended a confab for Daimler Truck North America, multi-billion-dollar company, part of a larger Daimler Truck global company, $100 billion or whatever gross number it is, 100,000 employees. And in our section, the entire management team, called the executive committee, was up there. The president and CEO, head of sales, head of operations, head of engineering, and all that stuff. And Clarity 1 and 2 would fit perfectly with a senior leadership alignment activity for that group.
Oh, for sure, dude.
What impressed me was they go through that every 2 years or every 5 years. Every time they have a new CEO, they go through this kind of thing, deciding what they're going to be. And with the way the trucking industry has been, everything they told me last week was reminiscent of 2005 when we went through a turnaround. They're asking all their suppliers to give up 15% of their prices. And they said, we want to make more money, and it's all up to you to make it happen for us. Okay, wonderful. And you could see that even the president, he looked around and he said, we don't always agree on what we're doing. So the clarity without the valuation still is a great exercise for any team, no matter what size. And
Paul, in the 90s, when I worked for Johnson Controls, we sold $1 billion division. I was part of a team that sold $1 billion division for that. And I would have killed to have Clarity 1 for that. Like, we could have gone to, we were the seller. I would have killed to look at that. I can tell you that as part of the team, just a detail, just one detail to show you that we all think all these big companies have it together. When we were going through that exercise, we did an audit of fixed assets across 20 plants that were in 20-ish plants that were in North America, Europe, and Latin America. We did not find all the fixed assets that were on our fixed asset list. And we found some that weren't on our fixed assets. Like, and that's a $1 billion division of a $40 billion company, right? Like, we always say, oh, all the big companies have it all together. Let me tell you, they don't.
And
they need
that
as much
asset
help as all
write-off
the other companies. And their part of their problem is they think they got all their stuff, and I'd use a different word, together, right? That's part of their problem.
Yeah, 100%, man.
And that asset write-off they had to do was probably a big hit to the balance sheet then.
Yeah. It was an interesting exercise for sure.
100%. I've seen the same thing. Mike.
Yeah. Sorry. So Ed, when do you think it's appropriate for the seller to do a sell side Q of E? At what size and at what point? Because I've heard that seems to be more and more popular from what I see. The seller doing it before the buyer does it, and also I've heard from my M&A banking folks down here in South Florida that that sell side Q of E is almost supplanting and really superseding. I shouldn't say superseding, but it's more important to a buyer than audited financials and or reviewed financial statement.
I would agree. I think the seller side Q of E is becoming probably. It used to be only about a 10 to 15% action, and it's now moving up to closer to a 30% action. In my opinion, it should almost be a 90% action.
Yes.
Because spending $20,000 to make sure that you've got your house in order and are aware of any deficiencies that are going to need to be addressed, the sooner you become aware of a flaw or a hole that's going to significantly affect the purchase price, you get a chance to put a Band-Aid or do a more strategically surgical activity on it so that it becomes less of an issue when the transaction starts to become much more relevant.
What size though, Ed? What size company should it be for anything over 10 million or?
I would say anything over 8 million would be probably a good
enterprise. 8 million of enterprise value.
5 years ago, before Q of E became popular, I was pushing a seller to do one. He was 11 million in sales. Chose not to do it. If you look at what we've talked about with, what CPAs are doing, they're just running numbers. They are not looking at the quality of those numbers. In a review, it's just what the management told us.
Exactly.
And even an audit, look at how many large companies don't know how to do an audit anymore. So, yeah,
that's correct.
Anything 10 million above for sure, I would be pushing it.
The big thing I would say is that we don't have any kind of rule from any organization that dictates accounting record processes and systems that says what should a Q of E look like. And so the hardest thing that I find, and that is, I deal with 2 regional CPA firms, and they generate Q of E, and I tell them what we ought to do is run a level 1 in addition to what they're writing before we issue the Q of E. And I said, pay me a little money. Let's run this past the owner. Let me hit with the owner. And the 2 of us talk to the owner and get the answer to the level 1 so that you incorporate that into your Q of E. And I've got the managing partner at one of the firms saying, I agree with you. Let's do it. And the other one is still not sure.
So what are those costing? What are they charging for Q of E's?
20 to 25,000.
That's all.
They're for small ones. For The one that Michael Butler had, that was 45,000.
Yeah, still a whole lot less than an audit would be.
Oh, exactly. I think, Paul, you hit it right on the head. It's that what you can learn from a really significant Q of E to a firm that's going to be selling up in that range, they really need the detail, and the more explicit information that can be provided to them, the better they're going to be able to negotiate a good, successful transaction.
It's
So-
interesting. Part of it goes to the emotional, the emotional. I mean,
So-
sellers
so-
get fatigued by having to write all these checks. Right?
One of the biggest issues with small companies that I think we all find is that they have too much invested in one or two or three customers. And if they lose them, they're going to be in trouble.
Exactly.
Tell me what in a review or an audit is going to highlight that piece of information.
I could
You'll
tell you
get
that.
it in a Q of E, but not in a review or an audit, I don't think.
No, but Paul, just excuse me. Sorry. Yes, in the financial footnotes of that reviewed financial statement, they will talk about customer concentration, and they will say that a certain percentage of revenue is concentrated in a certain percentage of clients. So that's a standard footnote. If they decide to put it, they should put it in there, but but it's standard disclosure. It's proper disclosure. So it would be in there. It wouldn't name them, but it will say that there's customer concentration.
Thank you.
But most people don't get to the footnotes.
I think I think this is an interesting conversation, and I'm going to draw Tip into this conversation because I think the financial part of this is really interesting, right? I have a CPA certificate. I like to look at financials just as much as anybody, and I like to understand the financial viability of the firm. And I think it's important, especially when we're coming up with a price and all that and viability of a deal. But I think there's so much more. I know we all know this, but I think I just want to say for all of us to remember, there's so much more in Clarity One that is non-financial that's super, super important to the viability of the deal. And we lose, I think the markets lose their focus because we do such a great job on financial and legal due diligence, and we don't do it on the people. And Tip, I'd love you to weigh in on this, right? If you would, just what do you hear?
Well, one of the challenges, I encounter similar things, and one of the greatest challenges is that, people are messy, and financials can be clean, and the economics can be clean and rational and sanitary, and the human issues generally are not. And I'm doing I'm doing a thing with an owner altitude session is what I'm calling it, where I do clarity level 1 sit down for 2 hours with a prospect, and I guarantee them $25,000 of value from that time that we spend together. Generally speaking, I have found, having done a number of these now, I have found that the 25,000 is covered in question number 1.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation they haven't had with anybody. None of their key advisors, none of their attorneys, none of their CPAs are talking to them about the dynamics and the competence of their leadership team, which is their greatest leverage source of human capital. And I would think that Larry would agree with me on that as well. It's that's their greatest source of leverage. And if that team isn't aligned, I mean, the rest of it's math.
We walk away from deals all the time based on financial things. And I think way too many times when we see deals come apart later on, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line, it's not the financial stuff that killed the integration or the deal after it was done. It's the other stuff. And we don't put enough time into that.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, Eric, and Tip, well said. ACG meetings I go to each month. Last one was M&A activities, and M&A experts on buy and sell were on the panel. Excellent panel. And they were asked at the end during Q&A, what is, other than the numbers, what is the number one factor you consider? And the follow-up was, what percent do you weigh on that factor after the numbers? And so the answer was the leadership team and people. And number two, well, people reflected by looking at the leadership team. And 90% was consensus by that panel, this particular panel, after the numbers. The numbers get you into the conversation, and then when you're making those final decisions, their view, it would shock the audience. It didn't shock the audience for them to say the leadership team, but for them to say right now, from their view, it's 90% of the final decision making. So it goes to your point, Tip, and why you brought it up, Eric.
And the PE firms spend a lot of time on this. Let me tell you, they go and interview the people a lot, and they spend a lot of time assessing. But non-PE firms don't do as good a job,
Correct.
generally speaking. And the lower you get in the market, the more we crank the meat grinder of the financial part and make the deal about the finances and less about the people and the other things in the deal.
Well, one other quick thing, and we've all seen the statistics, right, about how many mergers, acquisitions fail, how many of them are suboptimal, how many of them don't return what they promise, and everything like that. I don't know if you all have done that, but I spend I use that statistic a lot, and I ask people, why do you think that is? What do you think people missed? These people are great at their job. I mean, these people are geniuses, okay, at making the numbers work and making recommendations on the acquisition. How can the numbers be so dismal in terms of performance? And, I'll let it ride out there for a while, but to Eric, what you're saying, and Larry, especially what you just said about this panel, the puzzled look is really quite something. It's really something to behold, and I think it's a place where we can really add tremendous value to that conversation.
Tip,
Tremendous.
I'll jump in and say I'm currently working on the other side, where a potential buyer is asking me to deal with the M&A firm who bought a company in their market, and they've managed it very effectively over the last 4 years. They've taken it from 12 million down to $6 million. and what I approached the operator and said, "You want to sell that?" And they've given me the no response because they don't want to admit what has happened. But my clients acquired the 3 top people at that firm into his firm now, and he's saying, the minute I get it, I know I can put it right back up to $12 million because we didn't take all those clients. We just went out and got other clients because the guys were in non-competes. So they went out and got other business. They didn't need to steal it from their old client.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that also reinforces when George has us asking 24 questions, they're not all weighted the same.
Correct.
And the weighting, everyone knows the number one weighted question. Sales process.
Mm-hmm.
Preach.
Yes,
And
sales process.
And that's so amazing. So
Mike always gets all the sunshine. Come on.
Testify, my brother. Testify.
No, I mean, Larry, that's such a great point because, I mean, I don't know about you all, but I'd say it's somewhere up around 95% of clients, when I start working with them, they have no sales process. It's Hogwarts shit to them. Like it's magic and potions and spells. Like they have no process for their sales, and it still astounds to this day.
It's in the owner's head. That's where the sales process sits.
That's often right, Michael.
Well, and some of them think that that advertising is the sales process. Every lead that comes in when they place ads is the sales process.
And that's why we differentiate between sales and marketing.
That's the
$130 million business I've been talking about is the inverted triangle. Meaning, we have the 3 dimensions of growth that go like this. Well, you build, they're the opposite. They are so buttoning up when it comes to the value, predictable value. But where are they hurting? Sales process.
Mm-hmm.
And I work with them on the leadership team. That's already in 1 year improved a whole level. And also the inconsistency of how their people perform.
Hey, Ed, we call
That's
that
part of it.
that process that you were describing the vending machine sales process.
Yes. Oh, yes. I didn't
The
realize that, but it
vending
must come out.
machine
It must come out with the cigarettes, right?
I see we're coming up, and George had to leave, but I just want to, if you don't mind, I haven't seen Steve in a while, so Stephen, welcome. What you're listening to the conversation, and you've been busy with doing the things you're doing. What's your takeaway?
One of the biggest takeaways that I've actually had is starting to consider the buy side a little bit more. Because when Ed was talking about working between the buyer and the seller to really figure out what's going on in a business, that's information that, especially in the lower markets, like he was saying, they don't do. So this is actually a massive need that, like, if we could show them how easy it is to really go in, do a clarity level 1, get a sense even before the LOI is issued, it could really change the game, not just for the sell side, but also for the buy side. And it almost changes it from an adversarial type sales process to a cooperative one, because both sides are winning. The sell side, in creating this narrative and noting the strengths as well as the weaknesses, shows the buyer the really low hanging fruit, the potential ROI on the acquisition, just as much as, the processes that are working well. And the buy side lowers their risk because they know exactly what they're stepping into.
So go process.
So it's great for both sides. Like,
It is.
why would the buy side not do it when we have such a great tool to give them that information?
Yeah.
That's
the buy
really what I'm
side's
thinking.
the buy side's reluctant to pay for things. That's the problem.
Mhm.
And you see it the same as in the real estate market, right? Buy side people don't
Mhm.
want to engage, pay. They're happy to go for free. They're happy to call people on this call today and say, "Hey, what do you have for sale?" They all want to network to a deal, but to engage professionals to actually and pay them to actually do it is rare in the lower middle market for sure.
And that's crazy to me because
It is.
all of
Yeah.
us can see the
I may have found
very
one.
plain value. It pays for itself without even trying.
Yeah, I may have found one today,
Oh yeah?
this morning. Yeah.
That's excellent.
Any other takeaways from today?
Yeah, I like the idea of doing a clarity 1 for a seller early in the process, and sharing that with the potential buyer. I mean, making it part of the story, right? Just showing them, this is where we rank. This is what we have, and making that part of the business story, if you will. I think it's a great idea.
Do your own house inspection and provide it to the buyers as part of the sale process, right? Now there's no secrets, right?
All right. See you guys.
See you, Mike.
Everyone,
You're
be
great,
well.
guys. Thank you.
Be well.
My takeaway is I love it when Tip jumps into the conversation because there's always something interesting that comes out in that discussion.
Very good.
Thanks for the ambush, Eric.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for the tip, Tip.
So Ed, I'll share this with you, Ed, because you do a lot of valuation and you understand QVs. But there's a guy out there who has this company called Finsider. Have you heard of it?
Have not.
All right, so he has AI do QVs. He has an AI, I don't know what you would call it, an AI assistant, an AI agent, and
Uh-huh.
yeah. So he told me that for $2,500 you could do a Q of A using his AI agent, and it downloads right from QuickBooks, and it does all that stuff for you. Just to put it out there. I mean, he's an interesting guy. I mean, and AI is starting to do things, right? I don't know how accurate it is, but
I think
If he gets
QV for the
data
lower
off-
end of the market could be huge.
Yeah, if
Hey,
he-
Hey,
this
one
is
quick thing.
$2,500.
one quick thing before I vanish. A video I saw a while ago. It's really important. If you're going to use AI to analyze any spreadsheets, make sure that you are saving the Excel file as a PDF and then have AI analyze it, because of the coding behind each cell in Excel. It creates confusion for the AI and leads to somewhere between 2 to 3% error rate on a lot of calculations.
Thank you for that. That's very
So, just save it. It's real simple. You just save
Yeah.
the sheet as PDF and then you throw it up.
Okay.
So, cheers, guys.
See you, everyone.
Thanks.
Good job.